Hello there, Year 6, it's Mr. Conway here. Now for today's how-to guide, this is for today's maths lesson, and the LO for today's maths lesson is to interpret line graphs. And this is the question that we're going to be looking at. It's one of the examples that you have in front of you. The question says this: what is the same and what is different about the two graphs? And I've got my two graphs here. So it's a bit of a comparison question, okay? So let's have a look and get into it. Now first of all, let's have a look at the y-axis on both of these. How are they labelled? Well, I notice this is labelled in temperature, degrees C, and so is this graph. So at the moment, we've got a similarity there, both in temperature, and they both have the same unit value of degrees Celsius. Now let's have a look down at the bottom at our x-axis. I'm actually going to put a little x here, and a y there, and a y there, and an x here, just to help. Now if we look at the label down on the x-axis, they're both the same again. I have time. So at the moment, we've got lots of similarities here. Now look at the labels. I'm going to look at the scale, and the scale is these landmarks up the y-axis and along on the x-axis. So along my y-axis, they are going up in degrees Celsius, and on this line graph, it's 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. But on my other graph, it goes 0, 10, 20, 30. What is the difference here? Well, that's right, the landmarks are labelled slightly differently, but also very similarly at the same time. On this graph, they are going up in 5 degrees Celsius. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. But on this graph, it's going up in tens, 0, 10, 20, 30. So I'm going to put plus 10 degrees Celsius on this side. But what's interesting about this is even though they are going up in different increments, they're actually exactly the same. Because the gap between 0 and 10 is the same. It's 2 squares, 2 squares. The gap between 10 and 20 is 2 squares, and the same on here. So the only difference really is on this line graph. Even though it's going up in tens, you know that halfway between 0 and 10 is 5. 10 to 20, 15 is halfway, and 25 is halfway between 20 and 30. So the scales are different, but also the same. So that's an interesting one to look at. Next, let's look at the scales on the x-axis. We know that they are in time. On the x-axis, on the first line graph, it goes 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30. So what are the stages here? What are the steps? 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock, 10:30. Well, on the first line graph, it's going across every 30 minutes. What about the second line graph then? 9 to 10 o'clock. Well, that's going up, as you can clearly see, by 1 hour. So you know, have a prediction, have a guess, what the next label be, what the next scale be here. 9, 10, it'd be 11, it'd be over here somewhere actually. So we've got another difference. This is going up in increments of 30 minutes, and this is going up in increments of 1 hour. But some of you might have already spotted a pattern here. They are very similar in the y-axis in the sense that where 9 o'clock is, it's the same here. Where 10 o'clock is here, it's in the same position. It's the same gap between 9 and 10 o'clock. If I count the squares, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I count it on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the difference in these two line graphs is that the scale on both the y and the x-axis have different increments every half hour, every 5 degrees, every 10 degrees, and every hour, but the data is exactly the same. So there you are, that's just a quick little discovery, I suppose, a bit of an investigation between these two line graphs. But what's interesting, the most interesting thing is, even though with these subtle differences, the line graph and the data is exactly the same. See if you can spot if there's anything else out there as well, any other differences or any other similarities. Other than that, Year 6ers, enjoy your day today working with line graphs. Have a good day.